Ohio State coach Ryan Day today said that Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who's only played 3 games this year because of a recurring hamstring injury, we may know this week what his status will be for the playoff. But he also said that it is a decision that comes down to not only the receiver's health, but also just whether he wants to play in the postseason. And obviously he's had a recurring injury, so it's still a health decision to some extent at the end of the day. But Doug, how did what you heard today from Ryan Day change the way you see this situation that has been going on since opening night?
I just think we got to be careful here. This is a young man with millions of dollars on the line, and he only gets one shot at this. And so Ryan Day said, didn't Ryan Day say, Jaxon wants to play, right? But it got more complicated to me, the way it was expressed. And that is just a reality of the world. And I do think sometimes people don't want to acknowledge the newly complicated realities of everything, of life, but college football as it relates, and I'm just not going to have a lot of patience for back in the old days, players would. It's just live in the world. There's millions of dollars at stake. This guy's been hurt the whole year. Live in the world, okay? So, if you tweet at me and put Woody Hayes, I'm going to block you. Because please live in today, okay? And players can care about their teammates and care about their program and also be really conflicted because there are millions of dollars at stake. So, be cool. And it's complicated. And to me, when Ryan Day says Jaxon wants to play, but there's a decision beyond just health, and as you said, it's because of the health that all of this is here. It doesn't mean that if Jaxon Smith-Njigba had just finished it, had 1,600 receiving yards, he'd be I'm not playing the playoff. Right. That's not what we're talking about. But there are other people involved, right? There are agents involved. There are people who are trying to look out for the player's future who don't really care as much about everything else. And so they're part of the conversation. So please be cool. Please be cool. Please don't turn on the players that are part of the program that you claim to love and then you're going to be jackholes about it. Just be cool. Because it's a difficult decision. And I did not like some of the response. And it is from a minority. Most fans are cool about it. But, man, people were jackholes. There were some people who were jackholes when Denzel Ward didn't play in the Cotton Bowl. And it's man, do you understand this? So it's really tough. Please be cool.
In discussing another segment of injuries, the running back situation, Ryan Day pointed out the difference between being hurt and being injured. And at the end of the day, when he's saying that Jaxon wants to play, he's not saying Jaxon is healthy and wants to play. He's saying that Jaxon wants to play, but sometimes his body is not letting him play. He can't play football at times and hasn't been able to for most of this season. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind here, that it's not as if it would be wrong to frame this as Jaxon Smith-Njigba has nothing to lose but is still might opt out of playing in the postseason. And it may be that his body just doesn't give him the chance.
Jaxon has tried to play football again for Ohio State numerous times. I'm usually on the field before the games. I've seen him skip school sessions, skip all the pregame fun stuff that comes with college football to try to work through his hamstring multiple weeks in a row. He tried to come back twice to play when he, quite frankly, could have just shut it down and pulled a Nick Bosa and said, you know what, I'm done. I'm moving to Malibu. I'm going to train for the draft because I'm a first-round draft pick anyway. He didn't. He has tried numerous times to come back. He's even tweeted it out that he wants to play again. And he's now in social media talking trash to Michigan fans, saying, you don't want to play. Saying stuff like all types. He wants to play. It sounds like this is no longer just a Jaxon Smith-Njigba decision. Whether, as you just mentioned, Doug, agents get involved with this type of stuff or just his family in general. At some point, athletes are going to try to play through everything. If they can get up and walk and run and feel like they're fine, they'll play through anything that's hurting them. But at some point, someone has to step in and look out for that kid's future. And that's what it sounds like that's happening right now, is making sure that Jaxon doesn't just hop back on the field and we see what happened against Toledo and Iowa and he pops it the first time he tries to have an explosive play. So, as Doug said, be cool, because this kid has tried now 3 times to play football for you again. Sometimes it's just not in the cards, so we'll see. But it's very obvious at this point that he wants to play football for Ohio State again. It's because they were this was the opportunity. Even before they lost to Michigan, this is why he wanted to get back, to get on this stage and play for a national championship.
Ohio State football, they said that they take like a very structured approach to how they prepare for the playoff. There's like this period of like going back to fundamentals. Then there's a period where they put in a game plan for the specific opponent, and then there's what happens in Atlanta that actually prepares for the game. Doug, do you think Ohio State needs an answer from Jaxon Smith-Njigba at some point to be able to put together a game plan, or because he's a receiver, because they know him and they already have a rapport there and things, is that not as much of an issue? Or is it, do they need to kind of know what they have going before they get down to Atlanta at some point?
That's a good question, because it's like you don't want to be like, people always say like, well, give me a decision. It's like it's like, well, if you're making me tell you now, it's a no. It maybe would be a yes in 3 weeks, but if you're making me say now it's a no, are you sure that's what you want, right? I do think like he really matters to the game plan. And the thing that we've talked about all year, like the things he can do in the middle of the field, some of the option routes he can run, to the connection he has with CJ, the ability to sort of just like find space and then make explosive plays out of nowhere. That is a huge part of the game plan. And so I think it's reasonable to expect like a better or different version of like the Ohio State offense when you have a month. But I do think you kind of got to know what you have. So I don't know what the answer to that is, because it's like you want the answer now if it's a yes. And it's like, well, would you rather have a no now or a yes later? So I don't know.
No, I think it's tough, and I think that we saw this season Ohio State can beat some really good teams without Jaxon Smith-Njigba. They can win at Penn State. They can beat Notre Dame. Like, they can beat good teams. But the one time they got on the field against what is, I think unquestionably at this point, a great team in Michigan, they scored 3 points in the second half, and the offense just wasn't good enough. So I think between now and Georgia, between now and December 31st, you have to figure out a way to take this offense up a notch. The offense that doesn't have Jaxon Smith-Njigba, frankly. Like, that is it, because you can't assume you'll have him. You have to figure that out in the next month. And it's hard to do, I think, if you're playing the waiting game, but I also think they would welcome him back if he wanted to play, if he could play football.
He has a skill set that it feels like you can just plop it in because they have Jackson plays. So maybe there is an element to just plopping him in there. But we said it before. We've seen it before with Jalen Waddle, how he was not necessarily at his best, but they still played him in that game. I do wonder when they found out Jalen Waddle could actually play. Because from a media perspective, the public didn't find out till like 24 hours before that game that Jalen Waddle was playing. So you've had a full season of basically not playing without him, so you know what that looks like. So do you continue to game plan with him in the back of your head, even if you know that Emeka Egbuka also has to be ready to play in the slot if necessary?
Yeah, there was constant speculation about with Waddle with Alabama when Ohio State was playing them in the 2020 National Championship game, and he didn't have an impact in that game really, but they didn't necessarily, I don't think, obviously need him to win that game. They had a pretty good team. And Ohio State's got a pretty good team too, but will it include Jaxon Smith-Njigba? It's starting to seem less likely, but we may know later this week. So get the text, 614-350-3315. We'll tell you what we know as soon as we know it there. $3.99 a month after a 2-week free trial. And listen to us on Buckeye Talk. We'll be talking about this and other topics all week. Get it wherever you can find podcasts.